morning. My name is Rositsa Beluhova-Uzunova, and I'm Associate Professor at the Agricultural University of Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Welcome to the seminar series, Understanding Gender Pay Gap. The seminar is part of the Equality Days at Agricultural University of Plovdiv, Bulgaria. Although the equal pay for equal work principle was introduced in the Treaty of Rome in 1957, the so-called gender pay gap persists, with only marginal improvement being achieved in the recent years. What are the key definitions? Gender pay gap or just pay gap? The difference between the average gross hourly earnings of female and male employees expressed as a percentage of men's earnings. Gender wage gap. The difference between median earnings of men and women relative to the median earnings of men. Equal pay for equal value. Equal pay for work to which equal value is attributed without discrimination on grounds of sex or marginal marital status with regards to all aspects of pay and condition of remuneration. We could see the formula of unadjusted gender pay gap and adjusted gender pay gap. So unadjusted gender pay gap is the difference in average gross hourly earning between men and women. Adjusted gender pay gap controls for factors such as education, occupation, and experience. What we could see and say on global level. There is a global gender pay index. The World Economic Forum Global Gender Pay Gap report in 2024 revealed that on average, 68.5% of the global gender gap has been closed. The World Bank reported that women earn just 77 cents for each dollar paid to men, highlighting the global wage disparity. Progress varies significantly across regions and countries, with some nations closing over 80% of their gender pay gaps, while others lag behind. At the current rate, it is projected to take 137 years to achieve global gender parity. For 18-29 years old, in 2024, there is a 17% difference in gross annual pay between men and women. Nordic countries lead, but just in the closing the gender pay gap, actually, because the gender pay gap there is considerable. Economic impact. Of course, gender pay gap contributes to reduced economic output and increased dependency on welfare payments, especially among older women. So here we could see what does women earn compared to men. So while men earns 100%, a woman earns more than 100 in Luxembourg, but only 81 in Latvia, 81.7 in Austria. In Bulgaria, the gender pay gap actually is not that big, but we could highlight countries as Belgium, Italy, Romania, when serious improvement is made. So, for economy as whole, in 2023, women gross hourly earnings were on average 20% below those of men in the European Union and 12.3% in the euro area. Across European Union countries, the gender pay gap varies significantly, 20 percentage points ranging for minus 1.9 in Luxembourg and 19 in Latvia. Pay gaps can also be analyzed from the perspective of part-time or full-time employment. However, information at this level of details is not available for all the European Union countries. In 2023, the gender pay gap for part-time workers varied from minus 6% in Bulgaria, which is interesting, to 27.3% in Slovenia. A negative gender pay gap means that on average, women gross hourly earnings are higher than those of men. This is often due to selection bias, especially when the employment rate is lower for women than men. Women engaging in our market, in the labor market, may have comparably higher skills and education levels than men. For full-time workers, however, pay gap vary also very significantly in the countries, ranging from minus 8.1 in Belgium to 20.7 in Latvia. Gender pay gap is generally much lower for new labor market entrants and tends to widen with average. However, those differences over age groups can have different patterns across European Union countries. The gender pay gap might increase with age as a result of career interruptions women may experience during their working life. A breakdown for different sectors of the economy also revealed interesting patterns. However, information at this level of detail is not available, of course, again, comparable for all European Union countries. In the European Union countries where the data is available, the gender pay gap in financial insurance activities is higher than in business economy as whole. In 2023, the gender pay gap in financial and insurance activity varied from 40% in Belgium to considerable amount of 37% in Czechia, the Czech Republic. With the business economy as whole, the lowest gender pay gap was recorded in Malta and the highest in Cyprus. It is also interesting to note that the economic sector for which a significant number of European Union countries recorded negative gender pay gap, in particular 12 countries registered negative gender pay gap in water supply, waste management and remediation activities, and 14 in construction sector. In 2023, all European Union countries for which data are available, except Hungary and Slovenia, recorded a higher gender pay gap in absolute terms in private sector than in the public sector. This might be due to the fact that in most European Union countries, pay in the public sector is determined by transparent wage grids that apply equally to men and women. Gender pay gap varied in the private sector from 6.1% in Belgium to almost 22% in Cyprus, and in public sector, minus 4.1% in Cyprus to 19.7% in Hungary. A prosperous and social Europe depends on us all. Women and men in their diversity should have equal opportunities to thrive and to be economically independent, be paid equally for their work of equal value, have equal access to finance, and receive fair pensions. Women and men should equally share caring and financial responsibility. Increasing women participation in the labor market has strong positive impact on economy, notably in the context of shrinking workforce and skills shortages. It is also empowers women to shape their own lives, play a role in the public life, and be economically independent. Women's employment rate in the European Union is higher today than ever before, yet many women still experience barriers to joining and remaining in the labor market. Some women are structurally underrepresented in the labor market, often resulting from the intersection of gender with additional conditions of vulnerability or marginalization, such as belonging to an ethnic or religious minority or having migrant background. Improving work-life balance of workers is one of the ways of addressing the gender gaps in the labor market. Both parents need to feel responsible when it comes to family care. The Work-Life Balance Directive introduced minimum standards for family leave and flexible working arrangements for workers and promotes equal sharing of caring responsibilities between parents. The Commission tries to ensure that member states correctly transpose and implement this directive. What we could see here, that only 16% of the Roma women are paid employment in the European Union. Of course, only 10% of the construction workers and 25% of agricultural, forestry, fishing, and transportation workers are women, while only 25% of workers in education and 20% of workers in human health and social activities are men. Gender equality changes in member states, in particular particular their labor market, social inclusion, and education dimension. And this will continue to be monitored, of course, in the European Union. And it is important to take the right steps for equal pay. The structural reform supports program. The structural reform support program can support actually member state in mainstreaming gender in public administration, state budgeting, and financial management. In addition, it can contribute to national structural reform in member states to close the gender employment gap and to address the higher proportion of women in poverty, particularly older. Social and economic policies, taxation, social protection systems should not perpetuate structural gender inequalities based on traditional gender roles in work and in private life. Empowering women in labor market also means giving them the possibility to thrive as investors and entrepreneurs. The European Union cohesion policy supports women entrepreneurship, their integration into labor market, and gender equality in specific traditionally male sector. Target measures promoting participation of women in innovation will be is developed actually under Horizon Europe. European Innovation Council includes a pilot to promote women-led startups and innovative small and medium-sized enterprises. The Commission promotes also the persistence of women in decision-making position in private venture capital funds and supports funds investing with gender diverse portfolios through the InvestEU program to mobilize private and public investment in Europe for more sustainable, inclusive, and innovative growth. While there are more women university graduates in Europe than men, actually women remain underrepresented in higher paid professions. More women than men work in low paid jobs and sectors and in lower positions. Discriminatory social norms and stereotypes about women and men's skills and the undervaluation of women's work are some of the contributing factors. Digital transition is important in this context. With rapid transformation and digitalization of economy and labor market, today 90% of jobs require basic digital skills. Women only present 70% of people in these IT sectors and careers. Only 37 of STEM and graduates, despite the fact that girls outperform boys in digital literacy. This gap and this paradox will be addressed and is addressed by the updated Digital Education Action Plan and through the implementation of the Women in Digital. The Women in Digital scoreboard will be used more systematically. The updated skills agenda for Europe will help address horizontal segregation, stereotyping, and gender gaps in education and training. The Commission proposal for a Council recommendation on vocational education and training tends to support improving gender balance in traditionally male or female-dominated professions and address gender stereotypes. The Youth Guarantee will specifically address women that are not in education, employment, or training to ensure equal opportunities. In some of the communication at European Union level, gender equality is put forward as one of the key elements. The renewed strategic framework for gender equality in sport promotes women and girls' participation in sport and physical activity and gender balance in leadership position with sports organization. The principles of equal pay for equal work or work of equal value has been a part of the treaty since 1957, as I already said. It ensures that there are legal requirements in case of discrimination, yet women still earn on average less than men. Accumulated lifetime gender employment and gaps result in even wider pension gap, and older women are more at risk of poverty than men. Eliminating the gender pay gap requires addressing all of root causes, including women's lower participation in labor market, invisible and unpaid work, their higher use of part-time work and career breaks, as well as vertical and horizontal segregation based on gender stereotypes and discrimination. When information about pay levels is available, it is easier to detect gaps and discrimination. Because of lack of transparency, many women do not know or cannot prove that they are being underpaid. Reduced earnings, higher concentration in part-time work, and career gaps linked to the woman carrying responsibility contributed to the gender pension gap. In 2023 edition of pension report, the Commission, together with the Council of Social Protection Committee, assessed how risk and resources are shared in pension system between women and men. To protect pension rights and encourage equal sharing of care responsibility between men and women, a Commission explored member states and stakeholders the provision of pension credits for care-related career breaks in occupational pension schemes as recommended. So you could see the share of men working in digital sector is 3 times greater than women, and actually, although women are very, very good in school, only one of in 6 girls expect career as an engineer or scientist, and globally, only 1 of 10 decision makers at venture capital and private equity firms are female. All male founding teams receive almost 92 of all capital invested in Europe, which is huge amount and is raising questions. So here, thriving at work while managing caring responsibilities at home is a challenge, especially for women. Women often align their decision to work and how to work with their caring responsibilities and with whatever or how these duties are shared with the partner. This is a particular challenge for single parents, most of whom are women, and for people living in remote areas for whom support solutions are often lacking. Women also carry a disproportional burden of unpaid work, which constitutes a significant share of economic activity. An equal sharing of care responsibility at home is crucial, as is the availability of childcare, social care, and household services, in particular for single parents. Insufficient access to quality and affordable formal care and services is one of the key drivers of gender inequality in the labor market. Investing in care services is therefore important to support women, actually. It is also potential for job creation for both women and men. The Barcelona targets for provision of early childhood education and care arrangement for children are mostly met, but some member states are significantly lagging behind. Commission proposed the revised Barcelona targets to ensure further upwards convergence among member states of early childhood education and care. Moreover, the proposal for child guarantee in 2021 focused on the most significant barriers preventing children from accessing the necessary services for their well-being and personal development in order to break the poverty cycle and reduce inequality. The Commission continues supporting member states, work on improvements, the ability and affordability of quality care services for children and for other dependent through the investment of the European Social Fund Plus, European Regional Development Fund, InvestEU program, and the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development. But still, women in European Union spend 22 hours per week on care and housework, while men only 9. And here we are raising the question, why? And how can this gap be closed? How can women and men take the equal responsibility? At least a little bit more equal, actually. And here we're going to talk about a very interesting woman. Her name is Claudia Goldwyn. She's born in the USA in 1946, and she's a Nobel Prize Actually, she's American economic historian and labor economist. She is a professor at Harvard University, and in October 2023, she was awarded the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science for having advanced our understanding of women labor market outcomes. The third woman to win this award, she was the first one, actually, the first one to win this solo. She is a co-director of the National Bureau of Economic Research, Gender and Economic Study Group, and was the director of development of American Economy Program between 1989 to 2017. Goldwyn historical work on women and American economies, what she is best known for. Regarding that subjects, her papers have been most influential about the impact of pills on contraceptive pills on women career, marriage decision, education of women and men together in higher education, history of woman pursuit of career and family, woman last names after marriage as social indicator, which is also a very interesting fact. And the reason most undergraduates are now women, and new life history of women employment. Goldwyn was president of American Economics Association and Economic History Association. Of course, in 2015, Goldwyn and Tatiana Vilova initiated the Undergraduate Women in Economics Challenge in hopes of shrinking the gender gap among undergraduate majors in economics. The control trial was carried out for 1 year using 20 institutions to receive the treatment and 68 others as controls to see if light touch, low-cost intervention could increase the number of female economics majors. It was found that the treatment may have been successful at liberal art colleges and possibly at larger universities that in addition had their own randomized controlled trials. So, Claudia Goldwyn research has transformed the understanding of why women's wages and careers have historically been lower than men's and uncover key drivers of gender differences in the labor market. In her book, Understanding the Gender Gap, An Economic History of American Women, she writes about the evolution of female labor force in the United States from the late 18th century to the late 20th century, focusing on the issue of gender distinguish in the workplace and challenging the common previous understanding that women employment advances were a response of social revolution rather than long-run economic progress. She demonstrated that the gender wage gap has existed for centuries and has been shaped by social norms, labor market structure, and legal restrictions. Golden tackled two central women issues in economic today. Why the female labor force participation rate rising so dramatically over the past half century, particularly for married women, why the gap has between men and women earning been so persistent over the same period. In her working paper, the U-shaped female labor force function in economic development and economic history in 1994, Goldwyn writes about how female labor force participation follows this U-shaped trend. At the beginning, great number of women work in agriculture, but as industrialization progresses, their participation declines due to social norms and change of the labor market into more male-dominated sectors. However, as education improves, women return to labor force. This framework helps explain historical and cross-country labor trends. One of her most cited papers in 2014, A Grand Gender Convergence, its last chapter, underlined how making jobs more flexible would have a great impact on closing the gender gap. While some industries like technology, science, healthcare have embraced more flexible work structures, these changes have been slower to take hold in fields such as corporate business, finance, and law. Goldwyn's book Career and Family, Women's Century-Long Journey Towards Equality is a comprehensive synthesis of her research examining how social norms, economic forces, and personal choices intersect and have shaped women's lives and opportunities over the past century. It traces the history of college-educated women dealing with problems of balancing career, family through the 20th century in the United States, including the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women's careers. In the book, Goldwyn challenges the conventional oversimplified beliefs about the gender gap, that it's all about personal choice, free of any needs for policy intervention. She argues that choices are shaped by constraints created by society, technology, legal frameworks, and personal expectations. The article, The Power of the Pill, in 2002 by Goldwyn and Warren Scott, highlighted how access to birth control revolutionized women's economic opportunities. The pill enables women to delay marriage and childbirth and allows them to invest in higher education and career, therefore leading an increasingly labor force participation and professional advancement. The article, The Quiet Revolution That Transformed Women's Employment, Education, and Family in 2006, Goldwyn explained how access to birth control, changing aspiration, and work policies allowed more women to pursue careers in higher education. Goldwyn's research identifies a three-phase transformation in women labor force participation. In the early phases, few married women work and economic growth was insufficient to increase their participation. However, changes, for example, the rise of nice jobs that reduced the stereotype of married women working, improved access to education, and the introduction of part-time work gradually made employment more attractive. But the third phase, starting from the 60s, young women began to planning career as they were influenced by the availability of birth control pills, observing rising divorce rates and shifting social expectations. This shift led to increasingly investment in education in career-oriented fields and therefore contributed to reshaping the role of women in labor market more independent from their husbands. Goldwyn began by completing statistics from a range of sources, providing the first long series of pay gaps between men and women. Using materials that covered 200 years, she was able to demonstrate that many historically important structural changes in labor market actually benefited women long before the issue of equal pay was a priority. The gender earning gap lessened significantly during the Industrial Revolution, and when demand for administrative and clerical service increased in the beginning of the 20th century. However, despite economic growth, increased education level among women, and doubting in the proportion of women working for pay, the earning gap essentially stayed the same between 1930 and 1980. Using this statistic, Goldwyn was also able to show the pay discrimination that affected women increased significantly with the growth of service sector in the 20th century. Prior to this, women usually work in sectors where the pay was based on piecework. Workers in the types of industries where male or female were paid in relation to their productivity. Between the end of the 19th century and 1940, the pay difference between men and women can be attributed to discrimination increase from the 20 to 55% in the manufacturing sector. In other words, pay discrimination increased somewhat surprisingly at the same time as earning gap between men and women decreased. One reason for this was the piecework contracts were increasingly abundant in the favor of pay system based on monthly wage. Goldwyn showed that in association with the introduction of modern pay system, employment tended to benefit employees with long and uninterrupted careers. By studying how difference in income between men and women change over time, Goldwyn and her co-authors, Bertrand and Katz, demonstrated in an article from 2010 that initial earnings differences are small. However, as soon as the first child arrives, the trend changes. Earnings immediately fall and do not increase at the same rate for women who have child as their do men, even if they have the same education and profession. Studies from other countries have confirmed Goldwyn's conclusions, and parenthood can now almost entirely explain the income differences between women and men in high-income countries. Goldwyn showed that this motherhood effect can partly be explained by the nature of labor markets when many sectors expect employees to be constantly available and flexible. Because women often take greater responsibility than men for childcare, for example, this makes careers progression and earnings increases more difficult. Tasks that are hard to combine with part-time work also make it more challenging to maintain a career for person in a household, usually the woman, who chooses actually to reduce the working hours. All these factors have far-reaching consequences for women's earning. A glimpse of the future by trawling through the archives and compelling and correcting historical data, Golden has been able to present new and often surprising facts. She also given us a deeper understanding of the factors that affect women opportunities in labor market, how much their work has been in demand. The fact that women's choices have been often been and remain limited by marriage and responsibility for home and family is at the heart of her analysis and explanatory models. Golden research shows that difference between women and men in labor market are determined by diverse factors during various periods of social development. Policymakers who want to affect these differences must first understand why they exist. Investment in information and education or legislation that removes institutional barriers may have significant effect. Of course, particularly for a woman's career expectation, educational level. However, the same investment probably have limited effect in society where women already have high level of employment or perhaps are more highly educated than men. For example, we know that it is not enough for a woman to be educated on the same term as men. The earning gap between men and women remains. The opportunity to plan and finance a return to labor force after having children or work more flexibly may be of greater importance. Some variables that help explain these gender pay gaps include actually there are a few factors. Occupational segregation or horizontal segregation refers to disparity in pay associated with occupational earning. In 2023 research study conducted by Fold illustrate how the concentration of women in care occupations contributes significantly to the gender pay gap. Their findings show that while both women and men are affected by care services wage penalties, women in the occupation face greater tribulation, considering they are more likely to be employed in care services. Jacobs in 1995 and Boyle referred that the horizontal division of labor as high-tech versus high-touch, with high-tech being more financially rewarding. Men are more likely to be in relatively high-paying, dangerous industries like mining, construction, manufacturing to be presented by union. Women, in contrast, are more likely to be in clerical jobs and to work in service industry. A study of the U.S. labor market force in the 90s suggests that the gender differences in occupation, industry, and union status explain the estimated 53% of wage gap. The 2017 study in American Economic Journal found that the growing importance of the services sector has played a role in reducing the gender pay gap in pay in hours. In 1998, adjusting both differences in human capital and industry, occupation, and uniformism increased the size of American women average earning from 80% of American men to 91%. In 1917 study by U.S. National Science Foundation, actually there is much larger proportion of men in high-tech playing fields such as mathematics, computer science, the two highest paying scientific fields. Men accounted for about 75% of doctoral degrees in those fields and expected to earn much more compared to women. In the social science, difference between men and women with PhD is significantly smaller, and with men earning $66,000 compared to $62,000 for women. However, in some fields, women earn more. In chemistry, for example. Discrimination. In 2015 meta-analysis of studies of experimental stimulation of employment found that men were preferred for male-dominated roles, whereas no strong preference for either gender was found for female-dominated or integrated roles. However, this men applying for strongly female stereotype jobs need to make between twice or 3 times as many applications as do women to receive a positive response. And women are applying to male-dominated jobs face lower level of discrimination. In 2018, a review of almost all experiments since 2005 found that most studies found that Actually, the evidence for gender discrimination is very mixed, and the amount of gender discrimination varies very much. In 2016 interview, the Claudia Goldwyn again argued that discrimination by employers was no longer a significant cause for gender pay gap, and the cause is instead more suitable cultural expectation, which are legacy of historical discrimination. According to Goldwyn, this expectation caused women on average to prioritize flexibility, take different risks to avoid situation of this discrimination, which is expected, not real, but expected. She advocated educational reforms to address the remaining gender pay gap rather than mandate on business, arguing that the latter is simply too difficult to implement given the demand of the current business environment. A series of 4 studies from 2019 found that even if these careers do not pay less, people assume that men will be less interested in any careers. That majority of the females, and this is potential to create prophecy in the people that are less interested in promoting pay raises in female-dominated careers. Parenthood actually and motherhood penalty. Studies have shown that an increasing share of gender pay gap over time is due to children. The phenomenon of lower wage due to childbearing has been set or defined as motherhood penalty. In short, motherhood penalty depreciates the greatest disadvantages mothers face as far as earning less wages than a woman without child. According to a study conducted in 2014, mothers were shown to earn 3% less than women without children and 15% less than men without children. Although this is true that gender pay gap has narrowed, this phenomenon is essentially only significant for men without child and women without child. Further studies have shown that the motherhood penalty has been unwavering rather than declining, like the gender pay gap, for example. The contribution of motherhood penalty to disparity in earnings between genders differs in countries. In Southern Europe, mothers earn more than childless women. In Nordic companies, mothers earn slightly less. In continental Europe and Anglo-Saxon European countries, the difference is larger. In Eastern Europe, a large part of the pay gap is due to motherhood. Traditionally, mothers leave the workforce temporarily to take care of their children. The length of parental leave for mothers affects the gender pay. Shorter parental leave may lead to women to leave the workplace longer. Longer parental leaves can result in reduced wages of mothers. Moderate leaves allow mothers to balance career and motherhood. The availability of childcare can reduce the motherhood penalty as well as increasing workplace participation by mothers. Women tend to take lower paying jobs because they are more likely to have more flexible timing compared to high paying jobs. Since women are more likely to work fewer hours than men, they have less experience, which will cause women to be behind in workforce. Mothers are more likely to work part-time. In 2019 study conducted in Germany found that women with children are discriminated against the job market, whereas men with children are not. Another explanation of such gender pay gap is distribution of housework. Couples who raise child tend to designate the mother to do the larger share of housework and take on the main responsibility of children. And as a result, women tend to have less time available for wage work. Gender norms. Another social factor which is related to the others is this specific gender roles. Job choices influenced by socialization are often slotted by demand-side decision in framework of wage discrimination rather than result of labor market discrimination influenced by job choice. Men that are in non-traditional job roles or jobs that are primarily seen as woman-focused jobs such as nursing have higher job satisfaction that motivates the men to continue in these jobs fields despite the criticism they may receive. According to 1998 study, in eyes of some employees, women in the middle management are perceived to lack the courage, leadership, and drive that male managers appear to have, despite female middle managers achieving results on par with the male in terms of successful project and achieving results for their employment companies. These perceptions, along with the factors previously described, contribute to the difficulty of women to have higher ranks when compared to men in similar positions. The ideas of gender roles stem somewhat from media. Of course, media portrays ideal gender-specific roles of which gender stereotypes are built. These stereotypes then translate to the types of work men and women can or should do. In this way, gender plays a mediating role in work discrimination, and women find themselves in positions that do not allow for the same advancement as men. Some research suggests that women are more likely to volunteer for tasks that are less likely to help earn promotions, and that they are more likely to be asked to volunteer and more likely to say yes to these requests. Automatization is expected to affect male and female employment differently as the labor market is heavily gendered. A paper published in 1998 predicted that women are significantly more likely to be displaced by automatization than male. The research found that female workers perform more routine tasks in their jobs than men, which are vulnerable to automatization. Claudia Goldwyn, of course, again, found that the gender pay gap is largely caused by women having children, as already said, and include discrimination in greedy work. Greedy work has been defined as jobs which pay a large premium for overwork and round-the-clock availability, like finance, law, consulting jobs. Women who work in these jobs get paid the same as men. Through very few women choose overwork jobs, often because it is incomparable with child raising. And the research suggests that the best solution for overwork is that employees need to start demanding more flexibility, and company needs to realize that more work can be shared and that highly skilled employees are more interchangeable than employees that are acomodați to believe. The gender pay gap can be a problem for public policy perspective because it reduces economic output and means that women are more likely to be dependent upon welfare payments, especially in the old age. In 2009, a report for Australian Department argues that in addition to fairness and equality, there are also strong economic imperatives for addressing the gender pay gap. In October study 2012 by American Association of University Women, actually the study found that over the course of 46 years, American woman with a college degree will make about 1.2 million less than a man with the same education, which is huge. Therefore, closing the gender pay gap and raising women wages should have a stimulating effect. Using data from 2019, there was a report that if women in American labor force receive pay comparable with their male co-workers, poverty for women in labor force would be reduced over 40%. High poverty rates among working single mothers would fall from 27 to 60%. Moreover, they found that equal pay for women in labor force would increase their annual earnings, and of course will be increase the gross domestic product of the United States. Acting to promote gender equality might contribute 13 trillion to the global gross domestic product by 2030. According to the European Institute for Gender Equality, improving gender equality in the European Union might result 9.6 rise in the European Union gross domestic product per capita. Now, what about What about the actually the women pensions? Considering women make less than men overall, they are also less likely to be eligible for pension plans. This is because pension plans are generally calculated based on salary per year. First, this would require women to be employed in jobs that offer retirement plans, which they are less likely to be part of than men. The European Commission argued that the pay gap has significant effect on pensions, since women's lifetime earnings are 70% lower than men's, they have lower pension. Analysis conducted by World Bank called Changing Nature of Work connects earning with skills accumulation, suggesting that women also accumulate less human capital at work through their careers. This report shows that the payoffs for work experience is lower for women across the world as compared to men. For example, in Venezuela, for each additional year of work, men wages increase average 2.2% compared to only 1.5% for women. In Denmark, by contrast, the payoff to additional year of work experience are the same for both women and men. To address these differences, the report argues that governments should seek to remove limitation on type or nature of work available to women and men, and eliminate rules that limit women's property rights. Economics predicts that the partners with higher wages have greater bargaining power within their household dynamic. The gender pay gap may put women at disadvantage to their male partners. Makeover research has found that fewer resources women have available to them, the less likely they are to leave the abusive relationship. Other economic models have explained upon this idea, demonstrating that when pursuing divorce is too costly, the threat of domestic violence may act as a potential method to shift bargaining advantages within the household. Researchers have further established an explicit relation between domestic violence and labor market conditions, finding that the declining wage gap explained a 9% decrease in domestic violence rate. The estimated cost of domestic violence due to medical care in decline in productivity may be more than 10 billion. Women tend to be affected by this more than men, and in addition, exposure to domestic abuse has negative implications not only for adults but also for children. At least 50% of the variability in lifetime earnings can be attributed to early childhood experience, and adults from households with documented abuse and neglect have a lower level of education as well as economic earnings. So, what is European Union doing? Sorry, equal pay for between men and women is one of the founding principles from Article 157 of the Treaty of the European Union. It stipulated each member state shall ensure that the principle of equal pay for female and male workers for equal work or equal pay value is applied. The directive on equal opportunities and equal treatment of men and women in matters of employment and occupation include equal pay matters, consolidated several directives on gender equality in the field of employment, together with case law of Court of Justice of European Union. The European Commission monitors the correct transposition and enforcement of the directive. Pay transparency. The lack of pay transparency makes an effective implementation of the fundamental rights to equal pay between women and men for women and men for equal work or equal value of major challenges in the European Union. Women are often unaware about pay discrimination while performing the same work or the work of equal value to their male counterparts. A lack of pay transparency does not allow a proper assessment of reasons for pay inequalities. In March 2014, European Commission adopted a recommendation on strengthening the principles of equal pay between men and women through transparency. It provided a guidance to help European Union countries to implement the equal pay principles more effectively and focuses especially on enhancing pay transparency. Following the perspective of problems with the implementation of the rights to equal pay, new European Union rules on pay transparency were adopted in 2023. They are outlined in Directive 2023/970, aimed at strengthening the application of principle of equal pay for equal work, or a work of equal value between men and women through the pay transparency and enforcement mechanism. The directive established pay transparency standards to empower workers to claim their rights to equal pay. It stimulates debate around pay equality, triggers action to address unequal pay between women and men for the same work or work of equal value. The main elements of this actually is a right to information on pay prior employment, prohibition to ask salary history, and prohibition of non-disclosure agreement on salary, the right to request information on average pay levels, which aims at ensuring that workers can compare themselves at any time during the employment relationship with co-workers of other gender, caring about equal work or work of equal value. Pay reporting on pay gaps between female and male workers for employers with at least 100 employees. Joint pay assessment in case of indication of pay discrimination at employment level. There is a gender pay gap action plan. The Commission adopted it in November 2017. It addressed the various root causes the gender pay gap through the holistic approach. It consists 24 action points in 5 main strands: improving the application of equal pay principle, combating segregation in occupations and sector, breaking the glass ceiling, addressing vertical segregation, tackling the care penalty, better valorizing women's skills, efforts, and responsibilities, uncovering inequalities and stereotypes, alerting and informing about the gender pay gap, and enhancing partnership to tackle the gender pay gap. The work-life balance directive. Care responsibilities vary during life cycle. For instance, when people Actually, women and men should both have a responsibility or possibility combined private and working responsibilities in an equal way. It was the core of this document. Allowing the withdrawal of maternity leave directive, the Commission decided to take broad approach in addressing women underrepresentation in the labor market. One of the deliverables of this pillar of social rights is this initiative, which addresses the work-life balance challenges faced by working parents and carers. This initiative takes into account the development of society over the past decade in order to enable parents and people with caring responsibility to better balance their work and family lives and encourage better sharing of caring responsibilities between men and women. It is based on the result of public consultation and two-stage social pillar consultation. So the legal measures. The initiatives aim at modernizing the existing framework in area of family-related leaves and flexible working agreements. There is the introduction of paternity leave. Fathers or second parent will be able to take at least 10 working days of paternity leave, strengthening the existing rights to 4 months paternal leave, introducing of career leaves for workers providing personal care or support to a relative or a person living in the same household. There are some legal measures here, of course, and the policy measures. In order to complement the legislative proposal, the initiatives also includes non-legislative measures, ensuring protection against discrimination and dismissal for parents, encouraging gender-balanced use of family-related leaves and flexible working agreement arrangements, making better use of European funds to improve provision of formal care services, remove economic this initiative for second earning, which prevent women from accessing the labor market or working full-time. Parents and carriers will profit from better work-life balance, makeover, the foreseen increase in women's employment, their higher earnings and career progression will positively impact their and their family economic prosperity, social inclusion, and health. Companies with benefits from wider talent pool and more motivated and productive labor force, as well as less absence team. Gender balance on corporative boards. These Directive for gender balance on corporative boards requires large listed companies to attain at least 40% of the underrepresented gender in their supervisory board of listed companies, 33 among all directors. It is provided legal requirements, safeguards for clear, objective, and transparent board appointment procedures with objective assessment based on qualification. Women and men in political decision-making, women are still significantly underrepresented in decision-making position at all levels in politics. On average, across the European Union, women account for only 33% of members of national parliaments, 33% of senior ministers in member states' governments, and only 5 member states have women prime minister. Progress has been slow and uneven, with large gaps emerging between member states. Women progress in corporative leadership has gradually increased, but the top jobs are still largely occupied by men. Around 34% of board members of the European Union largest publicly listed companies are women, an increase of 2 percentage points. However, there has been no such progress at higher levels, with women still holding less than 1 in 10 board chairs and chief executive officer positions. The most significant improvement is observed in countries that have taken these legislative measures to increase gender balance on board. The underrepresentation of women in decision-making is very broad and issue. It needs to be placed in the context of several policy efforts aimed at improving gender equality. This includes policies to increase employment rate of women, to reduce gender pay gap, to tackle gender segregation in education and employment, to tackle non-transparent nomination and promotion schemes still prevalent in political and corporate cultures. Moreover, it is necessary to promote family-friendly policies to support more equal distribution of caring and domestic responsibilities, to improve the work-life balance both for men and women. Men occupy the majority of leadership positions. They are the gatekeepers to position of power. Engagement of male senior leaders is one of the driving forces for change, both political and in corporative world. Rising awareness. The Equal Pay Day takes place in many European countries as Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Estonia, France, the Netherlands, Portugal, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden. The event aims at raising awareness on gender pay gap. It has received a lot of media attention and triggered various national equal pay campaigns. The Equal Pay Day in 2025 is very soon, on 17th of November. So, what we should do and how we could summarize. The gender pay gap is both economic and social issue. It persists due to structural, institutional, and of course, cultural factors. Policy, corporative world, and awareness are essential for the change. So, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you like the presentation, and actually the question about the gender pay gap and the equal opportunities is very important for, I think should be very important for all.